Welcome to AnimeFan Narrations, Solo Leveling Episode 58.
You have exceeded the allowed information threshold.
The same message repeated endlessly until Esil finished her explanation. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed with suspicion.
If you hadn't stepped in, I wouldn't have thought twice about it.
In fact, he might have dismissed Esil's story as just another fabricated backstory created by the system for the monsters in this dungeon. Level-ups, quests, penalties, instant dungeons, even the process of choosing a class, it all mirrored the mechanics of a video game. A lore-filled narrative for the monsters would have seemed perfectly natural within that context. But the system's abrupt interference had changed everything. Jinwoo was now convinced of one thing.
Talking to her could hold the key to unraveling everything.
By stepping in so forcefully, the system had made a critical error.
Did I do something wrong?
As Jinwoo's expression darkened, so did Esil's, her earlier determination giving way to unease.
What is the system so intent on hiding? Is it this unknown enemy the demons were supposed to face? The reason behind the war? Or perhaps its ultimate conclusion?
To uncover the truth, Jinwoo decided to refine his next question.
Who were these terrifyingly powerful enemies?
But before Esil could respond, like a machine that had suddenly run out of power, Esil froze in place. The stillness didn't last long. Her body slumped lifelessly, and she collapsed onto the ground. Jinwoo caught her mid-fall and gently laid her down. Her steady breathing reassured him that she wasn't in any immediate danger. However, the slight furrow in her brow suggested some discomfort, and her breathing appeared uneven. To make her more comfortable, Jinwoo began removing her armor. The pieces came off without much resistance. Using the cape attached to the armor, he rolled it up and placed it under her head like a makeshift pillow. For a monster, it seemed like a lot of effort, but Jinwoo didn't think he was being overly kind. After all, this situation had given him another critical clue.
The enemies the demons were preparing to fight?
The system's extreme reaction to any mention of these mysterious beings couldn't be ignored.
Could they be connected?
What if these entities wielded immense, godlike power and for some unknown reason were exerting influence on Earth, or perhaps even on him specifically? Opening the store interface, Jinwoo considered his options. He tried using a potion to revive Esil, but it had no effect.
Looks like I'll have to wait it out.
He settled himself down next to her. While waiting for her to regain consciousness, Jinwoo meticulously reviewed and pieced together every scrap of information she had shared so far.
Huh?
Esil abruptly sat up. Feeling someone else's presence nearby, she turned her head to see Jinwoo silently sitting beside her. Her shoulders twitched slightly.
So it wasn't a dream.
Coming to grips with the situation, Esil scanned her surroundings. The sight of enormous heaps of dead superior demons sprawled across the battlefield made her eyes widen in shock. Her brows furrowed deeply. Demons with limited intelligence never considered their smarter counterparts as part of their own kind. An unconscious demon like Esil could have easily been seen as an appetizing target. Yet, the fact that she remained unharmed meant only one thing.
Did you protect me the entire time?
Jinwoo didn't respond. Instead, he stood up and offered his hand to help her. Overcome with emotion, Esil grabbed his hand and carefully rose to her feet.
Thank you.
How long will it take to reach the entry permit?
Not long. I'll guide you there.
Esil then held out her wrists as if expecting something. Jinwoo and Esil exchanged puzzled looks. Breaking the silence, Esil hesitantly spoke up.
Since I'm your prisoner, shouldn't you tie my hands before we go?
Nope.
Jinwoo didn't see the need. He was more than capable of stopping her if she tried to resist or flee. Besides, he wasn't interested in wasting more time on unnecessary gestures. He gave her a slight nudge on the back, signaling her to move forward. Esil's heart began racing, likely out of fear, but Jinwoo chose not to comment on it. His attention turned to the horses the demons had left behind.
What about those?
We'll bring them with us.
With a faint blush on her cheeks, Esil grabbed the reins and led the way. Jinwoo followed her in silence. As Esil had promised, the destination wasn't far. Soon, they arrived at what appeared to be the site of the entry permit. It was a massive fortress.
A castle for demons within the demon's castle itself, huh?
Though called the Demon's Castle, it was more of a towering structure. Yet the building before Jinwoo's eyes closely resembled a medieval fortress, as if modeled after the ancient castles of old. The guards stationed at the massive gates tensed up at the sight of Jinwoo, but
He's a guest.
Esil's indifferent tone, accompanied by a slight nod of her chin, was enough to prompt the guards to swiftly open the gates. Not long after, a group of knights emerged from the castle's interior to greet her.
Lady Esil, we've been awaiting your return.
Where's my father?
The Lord is in the audience chamber, my lady.
I see.
One of the knights cast a cautious glance at Jinwoo and inquired hesitantly.
Lady Esil, may I ask who this gentleman is?
He's a significant guest. Make sure to conduct yourselves properly.
Esil's commanding tone left no room for argument, and the knights immediately stepped aside, bowing their heads respectfully. Jinwoo silently followed her lead, stepping further into the castle. The long, wide corridor led them to an expansive chamber that bore a striking resemblance to a dungeon's boss room.
So this must be the audience chamber?
Jinwoo took in his surroundings. Massive stone pillars stretched toward the ceiling, evenly spaced on either side, while the central area was vast and open, seemingly designed to accommodate fierce combat.
If I had fought my way here, this is probably where the final boss battle would have taken place.
His gaze settled on the demon aristocrat seated on an imposing throne atop a raised platform at the far end of the chamber. It was clear that this figure was the master of the castle. Esil and Jinwoo stopped in front of the boss. The demon, regal and composed, was the first to speak.
Esil.
Father, this individual is...
Before Esil could finish explaining, the demon lord locked eyes with Jinwoo. His expression shifted dramatically as his brows shot up in shock. His pupils trembled noticeably.
You. Who is this that you've brought before me?
Father, this man is a guest.
Esil tried her best to clarify, but the demon lord's agitation only grew stronger.
A guest? What kind of guest storms into their host's home accompanied by an army?
An army?
Esil's eyes darted to Jinwoo in confusion. What army was her father referring to? The demon lord kept his unrelenting gaze fixed on Jinwoo, his voice trembling with disbelief.
Esil, can't you see it for yourself? The endless soldiers concealed within that man's shadow?
Jinwoo's eyes narrowed, the intensity in his expression deepening. Esil instinctively stepped back, startled by the shift in the atmosphere. Meanwhile, Jinwoo himself was taken aback.
His perception is sharper than I anticipated.
The demon lord's abilities had allowed him to perceive the legion of soldiers hidden within Jinwoo's shadow.
I'm not quite sure if I should consider this a good thing or not.
Before arriving, Jinwoo had recalled all his shadow soldiers into his shadow, keeping them ready for any potential confrontation.
You dare bring an army into my domain?
The demon lord's booming voice echoed through the chamber, and within moments, a swarm of knights flooded into the audience hall.
Father!
Esil's voice rang out in desperation, but her father, now standing, glared at Jinwoo with unrestrained fury. Jinwoo, who had been quietly observing, finally broke his silence.
We had an agreement.
The lack of tension in Jinwoo's demeanor made the demon lord's expression harden further, his brows twitching in frustration.
What agreement are you referring to?
The entry permit.
Jinwoo moved closer, his voice steady and firm.
Hand over the floor's entry permit and I'll leave this floor without causing any trouble.
The demon lord gulped nervously.
So, he's the one who's been mercilessly cutting through demons as he ascends the floors.
The demon lord vividly remembered the despair he felt when he heard about the defeat of their dependable Vulcan and Metis. Although the Radiru Clan carried the title of aristocrats, they were ranked last, 20th, in the hierarchy of the demon nobility. In essence, they were the weakest among the noble families. If they had to confront someone who had effortlessly taken down Vulcan and Metis, they'd surely suffer devastating losses. But now this formidable foe was offering to leave peacefully on his own terms.
Should I trust him?
Still unsure, the demon lord cautiously asked.
Is that all you desire from us?
As if anticipating the question, Jinwoo responded calmly.
There's one more thing.
Of course there is.
The demon lord's expression darkened as his worst fears started to take shape. Even before hearing what Jinwoo had to say, the demon lord could already feel the frustration building in his chest, imagining the humiliation his clan and soldiers might face. And then Jinwoo placed his hand on Esil's shoulder and added,
I'd like to borrow this one as well.
What?
The demon lord and the surrounding knights gasped in unison, their shock palpable. Jinwoo glanced around, puzzled by their intense reactions.
Huh?
Esil had mentioned she knew the locations of the entry permits on the upper floors. He had only asked to borrow her briefly so she could guide him. But now...
Did I phrase that poorly?
Jinwoo scratched his head, perplexed, as he looked back and forth between the visibly trembling demon lord, the astonished knights, and Esil, whose face had turned an unmistakable shade of crimson.
Solo Leveling, Chapter 103.
You want my daughter as a guide?
Esil's repeated explanation, paired with Jinwoo confirming the same request, finally eased the boss's flustered state. He sank back into his throne, deep in thought.
An entry permit and a guide? Is that really all he's asking for?
Since the demons were confined to this place, they had always heard the persistent command to defend this land echoing in their minds. The directive wasn't oppressive by nature. But much like the instinct to eat when hungry or sleep when tired, it was an innate urge the demons felt compelled to obey. That was why the boss had felt such dread when he first received reports of the black-armored soldiers rampaging through their land and slaughtering lesser demons. He had feared that the threat they were meant to guard against had finally arrived. The boss had deliberated for a long time before ordering his forces to engage the invaders. To his surprise, the black-armored soldiers turned out to be easier to handle than anticipated. But the advanced scouts' report spoke of something far more alarming. Among the intruders were entities of a completely different caliber than those disposable black soldiers. The reports mentioned that platoons led by the towering knight, draped in robes who breathed fire, or the knight with an elongated attachment on its helmet, were nearly unbeatable. This forced the entire Radiru Clan to prepare for a massive mobilization to defeat those two formidable forces. Yet none of those reports even hinted at the man standing before the boss now. Not a single mention. This meant the true powerhouse of the enemy forces wasn't any of those knights. It was this man.
If I'd known that this human, this monster, was the leader of those soldiers, I never would have dared to engage them.
The boss could see it clearly now. Initially, he'd felt relieved when the black-armored soldiers suddenly disappeared. But now, he realized they hadn't vanished. They had simply gathered, concealed within the depths of this man's shadow, silently awaiting his command.
Thanks for watching Solo Leveling on AnimeFan Narrations. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for updates. Share your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.